Welcome to the February 17th edition of Beer in Front. I'm your host, Dave Zalatoris. How is everyone doing today? It seems like the last couple of weeks you have to kick this off with the weather because of some foul weather here in Chicago, and now it just seems like everywhere else in the country is getting hit outside of Oscar and Ray. They're doing okay in LA and Vegas, and the rest of us are shoveling and all this other nonsense. So hope everyone's doing good. Hope everyone's warm. Their water pipes haven't frozen. But yeah, it's been a fun week. I want to congratulate the Beard Ale podcast. They won the swag bag, so they'll be getting a pint glass and other various goodies as soon as I could get my way out of these mounds of snow out here. So expect a little package, hopefully very soon. This is going to be a king-size episode. This isn't the little Halloween candy that you get. This is going to be the good house that you're going to on Halloween. You're getting the full-size podcast this week. I have a great interview with Liz from The Beer and the Baker coming up. And also, I had an interview last night that will be on next week's show with Jeremy Banas. He's the author of Celis Beer that I've been talking about. That's a great interview. That'll be coming up next week. But I've got a lot going on today, so let's just stop dawdling and start the show off. Welcome, everyone, to Beer in Front. Today I have Liz from the fabulous Beer and the Baker, which you should follow if you don't already. And we'll talk about her blog, her new series, and we'll find out more about her. So welcome, Liz. Thanks for coming on.
Thanks for having me.
Yes, and I think we're just going to do a joint Beer in Front, where today we're going to have the Maple Deth from Revolution. It's a classic. All right, let's crack it open.
All right. This is a goodie.
Yes. I think I have one more left after this.
I think this was my last one.
Oh.
I have like a Rev shelf in my fridge, and
yes, we've seen that on Twitter. We've seen your barrel-aged shelf. Are
I'm
you
like,
putting
it's
a dent
insane.
in that? Yeah.
Yeah, the other day I was looking, I'm like, well, I did that to kind of organize them, like what's in my fridge. And then I was like, I have a lot of Revolution beer.
Yes. I'm surprised that's not your Zoom background right now.
I know, you were like, that should be a Zoom background. And I was like, I think you're right.
Yeah.
So yeah, their barrel-aged series is so good. And I get so sad because like you like to enjoy them over the summer, but holding out to the summer is so hard. So I know they love us and they'll release more stuff, I'm sure. But some of your favorites you got to hold on to.
Yeah, but I remember like during the summer, they have on their website like the mystery package. Yeah. And I had the VSOD, I think I had that last summer. And they just threw it in the pack. I'm like, oh, okay, cool. Thank you.
Yeah, I was nervous about that. I'm like, I'm going to get something I don't want. But then I was seeing people were getting really cool things. So I was like, maybe I'll pull the trigger. But then with the Deepwood series, I'm like, well, I could just buy this and I know I'm set for weeks.
Mm-hmm. All right, well, let's find out more about you. So what got you into writing the blog? Let's find out more about you.
Yeah, so I am Beer and the Baker. This all started kind of through going to breweries. It was kind of a new chapter in my Chicago life, realizing how many breweries Chicago had and how many types of beers are out there. I think the first time it clicked was going to Maplewood and having like a Mr. Shaky. I think it was strawberry Mr. Shaky. And I'm like, this is beer. It's like a strawberry milkshake cocktail kind of thing. And I was like, this would be really fun to put in something baked. Because I love to bake. Specifically, like I would just bake things and bring them into work, which is, not a thing now. Yeah. But yeah, I would just bake things all the time. People knew me like as the baker at work. It was like, oh, it's someone's birthday. Liz is going to bake something. Yeah. I was like, I'm in.
Yeah.
So yeah, it was something just to kind of try. And I think my first post was phase 3 did like an orange milkshake IPA.
Okay.
And I was like, all right, let's find like an orange cake or something we can do. And this could be like the glaze, right? So a lot of trial and error, but it came out pretty good. And I brought it into work, and I didn't tell anyone there was booze in it. um, but everyone was like, "Wow, this is amazing." I'm like, "Thank you. You're also consuming alcohol on premises, but what's
Yeah,
up?"
it baked off. The high temperatures cooked it all off. You're safe.
Exactly. But yeah, and then I just found it fun going to so many different breweries, and especially as we got into like colder months, it was like, oh, you have stouts, and you see all these like Guinness stout chocolate cupcakes, right? And like stouts and chocolate are kind of a common comparison. So I wanted to try with, other beers, like what would this taste like? And I think texturally it's hard. Like I am no professional baker in science, right? But I make things that taste good. And then if you can throw some booze in it, why not, right? Especially with breweries that you love to go to and kind of make something fun with their products. So
Now, you mentioned before, are you originally from Chicago?
I am from the suburbs of Skokie.
Mhm.
But I've lived in the city for about 5 years, so I'm repping Avondale.
All right, very good. Now, how did you become a Sox fan if you grew up, north up in the Skokie area?
Yeah. So my dad is a
Mhm.
Sox fan, and every year I have a huge Italian family, which I think we've talked about.
Mhm.
Um, and all 18 of my cousins and 6 uncles would go down to Sox Park every year. And that was like our summer outing. We'd go to Sox games and Al's Beef and what's that play? Mario's Italian Ice. And that was
Oh
like the
yeah.
highlight of the summer. It was
Mhm.
like the big day with all the cousins. And like we all range in age, but I had like 3 girl cousins my age. So it was like, it was the thing to do. And yeah, ever since I was like, you know what, I'll rep Sox. I have a family divided though. My mom is a well, I don't know what she's a Cubs fan of
Yeah.
sorts, but she follows with my brother, so that's cool.
Yeah, like my mother, there's not a bandwagon high enough that she won't jump on. So in '05, you would have thought, she's been a Sox fan her whole life. You know, when the Bulls
Yeah.
were winning, the Blackhawks, she's Miss Hockey. Yeah, my mother's that way. So whoever's doing well, she's a big fan of.
Yeah, we're always like when she likes to talk shit about the Sox, and I'm like, name a current Cubs player,
Yeah,
and she's
besides
like,
Chris Bryant. Yeah,
Sammy Sosa.
yeah,
Like, good answer.
yeah.
uh,
All
anyways,
right.
cheers.
Cheers. Are we doing the same glass? No,
I
no.
don't have the new one. I have last
Oh,
year's.
yeah, this is the new one. All right. That's really good.
It is good. I think initially I was like maybe put off by the title because
Mhm.
I was like, I don't want this to be some super syrupy stout, like pastry stout to the max with maple syrup. But Marty did a great job. I mean, I can't complain about any of the Deepwood series. I think if I,
No,
I could rank them, but this is great to me. I think yeah, the way he's able to incorporate these flavors and not like it's not overkill, right? Like
no, like
everything's just,
the maple's there, but it doesn't overpower you. I mean, you
yeah,
get the maple is there, you get the barrel aging there. I mean, everything is, I mean, it's blended well. It's the perfect marriage here.
yeah, he is talented. And like,
Mhm.
I love listening to their Zoom calls when they do them.
Mhm.
Because they'll go into like the release and what went into it. And yeah, he's just like, he's fun to listen to. Like you would think there's so much, again, like just like baking, there's so much science that goes into beers and barrel aging and all his process, but he can like dumb it down for anyone, which I really
Yeah.
appreciate because I'm like, I don't make beer.
No.
That is not my day job. So being able to follow you is really cool. And yeah, I just love that crew. They're like down the street from me. They're my hometown heroes.
Yeah. Now, have you ever thought about brewing your own beer since you're into baking?
That would be awesome.
Mhm.
Uh, I think like there's a lot of people I mean, beer is interesting in the fact that there are people who like beer that doesn't taste like beer. That's an
Yeah.
audience. And there's people who love pastry stouts and like heavy chocolate, sugary, chocolate milky beers, right?
Mhm.
And I think my palate has kind of evolved from loving Mr. Shaky and milkshake IPAs to maybe going like, that's not really my thing anymore, but I
Yeah.
appreciate it for who it's made for. But there's nothing I love more than like a balanced stout. Like,
Okay.
not too sweet, just kind of a warm hug. Barrel aged obviously is its own magic, but that would be dope. So anyone listening, just holler at me.
Well, and you have Brew and Go right down the street from you, so you can get all the ingredients you need right there.
I know that was honestly a COVID thought. I'm like, maybe I'll go in there and see what I can do. And then I was like looking at my apartment. I'm like, where am I going to put this thing? And
Yeah, I used to. It does take up space. I don't mind the smell, but others did not appreciate the smell as much. Because
yeah,
especially in the winter, you have the windows closed and you're boiling seven
exactly.
gallons of liquid. So the steam is there and it doesn't come out. So I like it, but others might not.
Yeah, my
But yeah,
dad.
they're right down the street. That is a cool place. Is I would drive there to pick up my equipment
Oh,
back when I lived in the suburbs because I lived out in Glenview for years.
gotcha.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, my dad growing up used to make his own wine, which we kind of just called jet fuel. But
Mm-hmm.
that smell and aroma, like I can
Yeah.
remember the basement just kind of reeking of that. And it doesn't bother me, but I'm like, you got a space to put it, right?
Mm-hmm.
Like I'm in an apartment in the city, not so ideal.
Yeah.
But
So now, have you picked up your punchkis for tomorrow yet, or are you going to brave the elements and pick some up?
listen, I had big plans for
Yeah.
this, and the weather is just, ugh. So I am not picking them up, but if I was going to, I had big hopes for. There's this place in the southern burbs called Weber's Bakery,
Okay.
and it's in Garfield Ridge. It's like 55th, like Archer and Harlem. But every single year for my birthday when I was younger, my godmother got me a cake from there, and it was a banana split cake, and it was like banana cake, chocolate cake, strawberries in the middle, and like a whipped cream frosting. And it's the best thing in the world.
Okay.
But like a few years ago, they were named Illinois' best bakery. And so I'll just hold true to that for nostalgia, and everything they make is amazing. But they they do punchkis every year, and they were going to open at 4:30 a.m. tomorrow. And I was like, I'm doing it. I'm going down. And I told my parents, I'm like, I'm going to Weber's and I'll get everyone punchkis. Tell me what you want. And then like I kind of flaked on that a few days ago. I was like, what if the weather sucks and I have to shovel my car out in the morning? And
Yeah.
and then look where we are. So there's that. But I usually rely on people to bring them into work. Like there
Which we
was a
cannot do this year. Yeah.
I know there was like I can just remember going into work every single year and people had like every row you would go through, people had their own. Like some were from I work out in like Forest usually. So there was some from this bakery and this bakery, and you just kind of walk through the aisles and be like, oh, that looks good and whatever. But yeah, I mean, they're basically a jelly donut, but a special one. But I might try and run over to Dinkles. I think that's the closest to me. And depending on what my car looks like and the roads tomorrow, I think that's my go-to.
Yeah. We'll see what it's like in the morning. I could walk to Lutz, and I've
Okay.
had theirs a few years ago, and they were okay. They weren't the greatest in the world, but they were a lot better than stuff you're going to find at Jewel.
Right.
Or Target, but Target punchkis, yes.
Right. I'm like,
So
I could walk to Jewel or Target, but I don't think that's doing this holiday any justice.
no. So yeah, depending on if it's not 10 below in the morning, I might just take a walk over to Lutz and pick up some because I do want to try, and I don't think they make them, but I'm dying to try the rose ones. And I hear those are spectacular.
I hear that too, and I don't know where they are. I was I was gonna go to Baker Miller, so I was like, okay, I'm not going to Weber's. I'll go up to Lincoln Square and get Baker Miller because I love that place regardless. But they were just doing berry ones, so I'm
Okay.
like, who has like the rose, 100 different varieties of whatever, right? Because if you're like, you're not gonna go and get one. This is not me. I don't go
No.
to a bakery and get one thing. Uh, right? So I'm like, what six do I want?
Mhm.
What six am I going to pick?
What now on your last blog post, you featured beers from Beguile. I mean, we're not going to do the punchki, so what's next in store?
Yeah, so I have to write it tonight, but I'll
Okay.
give you the preview.
All right.
I went over to Half Acres Takeaway Cafe at
Okay.
Balmoral. I love everything Half Acre, from their IPAs to their Wild Series to their stouts. But their takeaway cafe is kind of their spin for COVID. They're hosting two different bakeries there. So it's like a full blown cafe. So you can get Aya pastry and the Butter Project, which I believe is out south. And
Wait,
then
wait.
Dark,
The Butter Project?
yeah,
That sounds whatever it is. It sounds
exactly.
great. Yeah.
Exactly. And dark matter coffee. So you can go in and get like coffee, pastries, bread. I think they do floral arrangements and their beer. So it's like a
Okay.
perfect one-stop shop. So that was originally going to be my first post,
Mm.
but then people on Twitter had been saying go to Lost Larson, and that was delicious. But yeah, so I went there last Friday and I grabbed a loaf of sourdough bread because I don't need that. And it's huge and delicious. I'm going to make grilled cheese with it tonight. They had like a Samoa cake. So think about the cookie, but it's
Okay.
like a donut, but it's a cake. And I think it's the best thing I've eaten all year.
Yeah.
I like kept looking around and just going like, do you taste this? This is the
Mm.
best thing I've had
Yeah.
all year. And then I got their Catch Hell, which was a 2020 release. So it was their barrel aged stout with vanilla and cinnamon. And I had gotten cans last year, but they had growlers on tap. So I got one of those
Okay.
and just kind of loaded up, and it was great. So I kind of always have Half Acre in my fridge,
Mm.
like for IPAs, they're kind of my go to. So yeah, and then now I just want to go back to Aya Pastry directly and be like, what else do you have? Because
Yeah.
this was amazing.
So now is this going to be hopefully like a weekly series that you put out?
Yeah, I think so. I think making content is so much harder because I don't need like 3 dozen cookies at home.
Yeah.
I can't bring them into the
Yeah.
office. So I'm like, this is kind of my way to not only support local bakeries, but breweries, right? Like I'm
Yeah.
gonna buy beer every week. It'd be fun to also get pastries from bakeries every week. So I have like a list of suggestions of places to go to from Twitter, which I'm excited about. And breweries are no shortage. I just kind of scope Google Maps and say, like, okay, what's over there? Like, so if someone was going to do this little trip, what could
Mm.
they do? And what kind of beers could they get? So,
Now, is it all going to be pastries or are there going to be breads? Because there's so many great bakeries in the Chicago area that make phenomenal breads too.
I know. I know. So I have pastry. I got the sourdough,
Mhm.
which I'm just like a full blown sucker for
Mm.
sourdough in general. Like I'll just rip a chunk off and eat it.
Yeah.
It's so good. So yeah, and then Lost Larson also, like their story was kind of unique. Like they have pastries, but they like to highlight like the different grains they use.
Okay.
So I didn't get too much into that because I didn't buy a ton of bread. I just kind of got like individual items, but yeah, I mean, if I'm going to bakery, I'm definitely going to get a pastry, but
Yeah.
having bread on hand is not the worst thing in general, right?
Mhm.
So,
Yeah. Because I remember, I think it's out in like Addison, but I know a friend of mine used to bring this bread from this bakery and it had sauerkraut baked on the crust and it was
whoa.
rye bread and like we would make Reubens and corned beef sandwiches with it and it was the best thing ever. So yeah, if you were to do breads, I'll get a hold of them and find the name of the place because this was just amazing. Yeah.
That would be fun. Also,
Yeah.
I've like nostalgically been thinking about like a good cinnamon raisin bread. Like I feel
Okay.
like my mom on weekends would be like, okay, cinnamon raisin bread with like warm butter. It
Yeah.
just is like, God, so
Mhm.
good. Even if you buy bread, right? Like you can make French toast. You could do all these things versus sandwiches or homemade croutons. Like,
Mhm.
so yeah, I'm trying not to eat as much bread because I sit at a desk all day at home and it doesn't really work. So,
Yeah. All right. So say you were going to a friend's house. or somebody that doesn't know beer, what would you put in your mix pack to bring to someone?
This is a fun one
Yeah.
because my brother, my brother's older than me, and he tries to keep up with me of sorts. He just had a baby, so I'm the cool younger sister.
Yeah.
But I remember I went to Dark Lord Day in 2019, and he's like, I need to try that beer because you went and you told me all about it, and I need to try that beer. It's like the coolest thing in the market, right?
Yeah.
So I'm like, okay, your birthday's coming up. I'll bring you Dark Lord. And he tried it and was like, I absolutely hate this beer. And I'm like, it's not for everyone. But my parents tried it too. And they were like, this tastes like soy sauce. I'm like, oh my God. Right. So there's a spectrum. But I think my parents are probably the best option for that. So like this summer, I brought them the blueberry ginger series, sour series from Rev.
Okay.
It's one of the freedom ones that would be in there because that's a beer that doesn't necessarily taste like beer, but it's delicious. It's very refreshing. Yeah, it's not your typical Pilsner beer-ish esque,
Yeah.
right? That would be one. I'm thinking about like a curated 6-pack from Beer Miscuous. This is what I'm going with.
Yes, we should do that. Definitely.
Yeah. So one of those would be in it. I think there's an appreciation. Recently, I got the Dovetail Kolsch. That beer is
Yeah.
delicious. I think Kolsch is something you should just always have in the fridge, like in between stouts. Like my fridge is full of barrel-aged stouts, and sometimes that is not okay. Like you need something lighter. So I probably put one of those in there. I think, you know, I'm not sure if you could get it in stores, but the Half Acre Benthic series, I did get the pack this year, and Half Acre is like sneakily, not sneakily, they're cool. I mean, everything they put out is great. I think any IPA from them is just top notch quality. Every week when they release new IPAs, I'm pretty much going to grab a 4-pack if I'm low in the
Yeah.
fridge. And then I love their Wild series for breakfast beers. Like that's another thing for people not into beer. Like I was telling someone recently, like instead of mimosas, grab like a Wild ale,
Yeah.
and it kind of serves as the same thing, maybe a little more funky, right? But it'll get you there. And then I'm trying to think like curveballs, maybe just like crews to look out for. I think phase 3, they do some really cool things. They're releasing IPAs every week, but their curvature series, and then they have a membership program, which I'm not a part of, but you can get some really cool beers through them too. I think that's a crew. It's in Lake Zurich, and you have to travel if you win a
Yeah.
lottery. Overall, I mean, they do really well. So like if I have to stock my fridge every week with IPAs, it's Half Acre, Phase 3, or Hop Butcher, one of
Yeah. You
those
can't go
three.
wrong. Now, let's see. I do have my list as a good reporter of questions. I think I have everything. Oh, here's one. What is your favorite bakery? If you had to pick one right now, you had to pick a pastry from any bakery. Which one are you grabbing?
I mean, I'd go Weber's
Okay.
nostalgia. If there's no traffic, you can get there pretty quick. I'll argue because you have to go down 55, which is not great, but their chocolate donuts are the best in the city. They're not like your stands or do right. I mean, I do love a good do right donut, but their chocolate frosted donuts, like they'll be sold out by noon if you're not there.
Yeah.
And then obviously the banana split cake is the best thing ever. But everything's like reasonably priced too. So that's another thing. Like you go in and you're like, I don't need a cake, but it's only $15. And this cookie pack is only $3. Oh, and these donuts are only 5. Like you end up with way too many things,
Yeah.
but it's
During a
delicious.
pandemic where you can't leave. Yeah.
I know. Even
Yeah.
the loaf of bread I got the other day, I
Yeah.
was like, I texted my mom, I was like, this bread loaf is huge. I'm cutting it in half and I'm bringing you half.
Yeah.
What about you? What would you pick?
I don't know. See, I'm lactose intolerant, and once I hit 50, it literally hit me overnight. I would have a cannoli. But
Mm,
there's one I think it's Norwich. It's either Chicago or Norwich. It's right there on the border, but it's called the Sicilian Bakery. It's
Hmm.
on Cumberland, maybe a block south of Lawrence, and they make
Okay.
some incredible cannolis. So I would probably have that, and I would feel it the next day. I haven't had one in a couple of years. It's like my stomach kills me now, and like I would just love to sit and just have a cannoli. When Ruby and I we went to Italy a couple years ago, there were so many different single ones, canolos, and they were lemon ones, and
Oh wow.
it was amazing. So I would probably have to go if I wasn't in Italy. I would probably go to the Sicilian bakery and grab a
Huh.
cannoli from there.
My I'm the worst Italian. I don't typically like ricotta cheese,
Yeah.
but I will stomach a cannoli. It's not my go-to, but my dad's favorite cookie is the Gucciadottis.
Okay.
It's like a fig cookie, kind of wrapped in like a butter cookie, but they're a pain to make. But that's like an Italian cookie. And then
Yeah.
pizzelles, those are
Oh yeah.
like amazing.
Mhm.
And there's a bakery. I'm trying to think where it is. It's in West Loop, but it's an Italian bakery and they have Gucciadottis. So I like once in a while I'll go get him a box of those. But
Mhm.
yeah. I also think I'm lactose intolerant, but I'm regretting I'm like in denial stage. I'm
Yeah.
like, maybe I'm not. I don't know.
Yeah, it's weird. Like with me, like ricotta, I'm done. I know right now there's no way. And it's heavier things. Like I could have pizza and I'm fine. But if I
Oh,
were to use half and half in my coffee, no, no.
yeah.
That's that's a no-go item. That's not gonna work. But it's the heavier things that I
Yeah.
can't have.
That sucks. I mean, especially with
Yeah.
sweets, right? Because these
Yeah.
things are, ugh,
Thank
a
God for
treat.
the lactate pills.
Yeah.
So now, did you get any suggestions on Twitter? Who's your jagoff of the week?
Man, so I have no suggestions. Someone did write that they had 43 to
Yeah,
nominate. But my jagoff of the week is everyone in Chicago putting out dibs on their cars
yeah,
because it's rude.
yeah.
And not only the people putting out dibs, but the people writing mean notes.
Mhm.
So I got a mean note on my car because I parked like up next to a snow mound and someone behind me left a huge gap in between mine and their car. And they wrote me this note like, how dare you take up two spaces? So inconsiderate during a pandemic and a blizzard. You're the worst neighbor. And I'm just kind of like my car was 2 blocks over. So then like 3 days later when I went to go see it, I'm like, okay, first of all,
Yeah.
anyway, then I've been seeing on like my group, community Facebook
Yeah.
group, all these mean, nasty notes that people are writing. It's like, I know we're on a no cursing show, but it's like,
Oh, go
uh,
ahead. Swear away. That's fine.
it's like, I'll fuck up your car next
Yeah.
time you move my dibs and blah, blah, blah. And I'm like, you're insane. Like, even
Yeah.
today, I went to move my car and I was going down the alley and some guy was like lifting his chair out of the snow to go park where he put dibs. And I'm like, this is not a legal thing.
Yeah.
And, oh, I hate it. It brings out the worst in Chicagoans.
But there's some good stuff out there. Like there's bar stools. I'm like, oh, that's not a bad bar stool. I wonder if I could, make this work. Ironing boards. There's everything out there. It's the one good thing. The place that Ruby and I live now, we have a garage, and it's like a
Okay.
godsend.
Yeah.
But yeah, I used to be, driving down and seeing all sorts of stuff. When I lived in the suburbs, I used a keg because I would brew and I would have a keg. So I'm like, all right, I threw the keg out. I'm like, if everyone else is going to do it, I'm going to do it too.
It's amazing.
Yeah.
I did see like 2 weeks ago, I saw a tire, like
Yeah.
just a tire,
Yeah.
and then someone had like a pantry shelf that's still out there.
Yeah.
A lot of parking cones, but it is pretty entertaining to like go up and down the streets. And it's like some guy has like a seesaw going on,
Yeah.
and I'm like, I don't really know what this is for, but
Yeah.
more props to you.
Yeah.
So yeah,
Well,
those are my jagoffs of the week.
All right, very good. Now, I do appreciate you coming on. It means a lot. Tell everyone where they could find you on Twitter, where they could find your blog.
Yeah, so Beer and the Baker on Twitter and Instagram. And my blog is beerandthebaker.com, and subscribe. And I think you'll get an email. Let me know if not. But yeah, just posting awesome treats around the city and all the good beer I'm drinking. So,
All right, well, Liz, well, thank you so much for coming on. I appreciate it. Cheers to you. And I'm sure one day we'll meet actually in person in the Trader Joe's parking lot, waiting to snake through the aisle, the 30-minute wait to get into Trader Joe's.
I know.
Yeah.
Cheers.
All
Thank
right,
you.
we'll talk to you later. Once again, I want to thank Liz from the Beer and the Baker. That was a fun time talking to her. I had some really good beers this week that I'll touch upon briefly. I know some of my friends are already going in circles around their house, so I'll try to keep this brief for you guys. A beer that I really enjoyed was from Collective Arts. It was called Origins of Darkness. Now, this had almond milk and coffee. And like I mentioned in the last piece, that I'm lactose intolerant. And this had everything on the label, what it had in the beer, which is great for someone like me. So I know this was safe to drink, and it was a really good beer. So if you see this one, pick this one up, Origins of Darkness. That was excellent. A brewery that I don't get here in Chicago, but thankfully Oscar at the Everything Show always sets me up and hooks me up with them, is Chapman Crafted Beer. They're in Orange, California. Now, Oscar sent me 3 different ones, but the one that I had this week that I loved was called Permanent Waves. This is what they call a Mexican-style light lager. Excellent. Excellent beer. If you're in California, pick up Chapman. Everything that I've had that Oscar has sent me, I've loved, but this was Permanent Waves. By all means, check that one out. I had another fruited sour that I liked from Humble Forager. This was their Coastal Sunshine with tart cherry, red raspberry, black currant, vanilla beans, and marshmallow. That sounds like a lot, but it was really good. If you see that one, please pick that one up. And longtime friend of the show, Sarah, brought over a couple Old Irvings for me, and I had the Double Beezer last night, which is always a great beer. So if you do see Double Beezer or anything from Old Irving, pick it up because it's terrific. All right, everyone, and there was no shortage of them this week. It's time for the Jagoffs of the Week. You know, with all the bad weather that's happening around the country, there were power outages in Portland, Oregon, and Fred Meyer, which is a grocery store chain owned by Kroger, they threw out a lot of perishables. Instead of giving them to food banks, things like that, it was cold out, so it wouldn't have perished. They hired police to stand guard so no one would go through the dumpsters. There are people hungry in this world. The food wasn't perishing because it was cold outside, but you wouldn't let anyone have it, and you hired the police department to guard your dumpsters. Fred Meyer and Kroger, you're jagoffs. And here's all you need to know about my buddy Josh Hawley. Now, Josh and his wife have filed charges over the peaceful protest that was outside their home. We all know, and the police reports say, this was a peaceful protest. Now, they filed charges over this, but Hawley voted to acquit Trump of inciting a deadly insurrection. That's all you need to know about him. He only cares about himself, and having people march outside his home, that's a far worse crime than, killing police officers in the Capitol. Josh, you're a jagoff. Lee Martin of Louisiana, he didn't believe the Gorilla Glue woman, so he decided he was going to put Gorilla Glue all around the mouth of a red Solo cup and put it to his mouth, and he thought this was just going to come off with his saliva. Well, Lee went to the hospital to get the red Solo cup removed from his mouth. Jag off. Conservative donor Fred Eshelman. Now, he donated over $2.5 million for a Stop the Steal campaign. And now he wants his money back because, as we all know, there was no steal going on. So, how did you have this much money to just donate? How did you become so wealthy that you could give $2.5 million and you're that gullible to believe all this nonsense? So, Fred, I really hope you don't get your money back. Jag off. And I really feel bad for the residents of Texas who don't deserve to not have power and everything else. But you've got some jag-off politicians there. Let's start with my little buddy Dan Crenshaw. Remember him? Now, he tweets out, this was in September, when Los Angeles and California, they were having brownouts for the heat. Now, he tweets out, Alexa, show me what happens when you let Democrats control energy policy. Dan, how are the constituents doing in your area? Do they have power? This is what happens when you deregulate and you let free market dictate everything. Dan, you're a jag-off. The Attorney General of Texas, Ken Paxton, said that California's politicians did this, not the heat. How do you explain your state not having power, Kenny? Jag off? Windbag Lieutenant Governor Dan Patrick. This is what happens when the Democrats are left in charge. Hey, Danny boy, how are the residents of Texas doing right now? Aren't you in charge? Aren't you and your ilk in charge? A Republican has been the governor of Texas for what? 25 years now? Since what? Ann Richards left? How long has that been? So, Dan, you're the jag-off. Oh, but the big jag-off is my favorite person, Senator Raphael Ted Cruz. Now, he's saying that when California was having all their issues, I hope you don't like air conditioning. Prick. Jag-off. Now, this is also the same Ted Cruz when Hurricane Sandy hit back in 2012, voted against giving them funding because we need to be fiscally responsible. But yeah, you're out there, brown-nosing Biden, wanting federal funds. You, the governor, everybody else wants federal funds. You know what? I think that's socialism. We shouldn't benefit you. Ted, you're a jag-off. And, when people question him on this, oh, well, this is no time for, politics. No, it's time for politics when you don't agree with something, but when your constituents are hurting, that's fine. You'll start begging for money. You're a prick jag-off. And Raphael's so stupid that if you're familiar with the Babylon Bee, it's a parody site. And, similar to like The Onion. So it's parody. Now, they put out a post about Disney looking for strong, fierce women who are also submissive and things like that after the whole nonsense with the idiot from The Mandalorian. Ted Cruz quote tweets this saying that he wishes this was parody. Ted, it is parody, you idiot. God, I hate this man. Jag off. How I didn't swear during that last segment is beyond me. All right, that's going to wrap things up for the February 17th edition of Beer in Front. I do thank you for listening, and once again, I thank Liz so much from The Beer and the Baker for coming on. Next week's show is going to be big as well. I'm going to have an interview with Jeremy Banas, the author of Celis Beer. Now, last week on the final, I said that, the Beer in Front was going to be Lagunitas IPA. That segment's going to be pushed back a couple weeks because I want to talk about Celis Beer next week. So that'll be coming up in a future episode. Okay, everyone, thanks so much for listening, and I will talk to you next week. Take care.